Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Let's just dive right in, because today we're unpacking one of the most legendary and honestly, frequently misunderstood survival stories in all of business history. We're talking about Federal Express. Now, you probably already know them as a massive global logistics giant, right? But today, we're actually going to look at the exact moment this company almost vanished before it even really got off the ground. We're going to separate the flattering myths from the hard realities, and hopefully pull out some absolutely crucial lessons about survival, strategy, and what it actually takes to keep a bold idea alive. Okay, picture this. It's 1974. We're in this cramped operations office in Memphis, Tennessee. A young Vietnam veteran named Fred Smith is just staring at his company's bank balance, and it reads roughly $5,000. Yikes, right? Somewhere out on the tarmac sits the fleet of small jets that make up his brand new airline. But right there on his desk sits a massive fuel bill that this fleet literally cannot fly without paying. He's already begged the banks, he's pleaded with investors, but the answer, time and time again, has just been a firm no. This company, with actual jets in the air, is exactly one unpaid fuel bill away from grouting the whole shebang. So, what does this all mean? How does a fledgling airline handle its very last dollars? Well, staring down the barrel of total bankruptcy, Smith does something that, frankly, sounds a lot less like a calculated business move and way more like a guy who has simply run out of conventional options. He takes the absolute last of the company's cash, hops on a flight to Las Vegas, and sits down at a blackjack table. No way, right? But he did. And he walks away with $27,000. Now, it's a dramatic win, for sure, but here's the thing you really need to understand. That 27 grand, it wasn't nearly enough on its own to save the company. I mean, the debt they owed completely dwarfed what he won that night on the casino floor. But it bought them something that was arguably just as valuable as money at that exact moment. It bought them a few more days to breathe. Section 1. The College Hub Concept. To really get how they ended up in this crazy situation, you gotta go back almost a decade to a lecture hall at Yale University in the mid-1960s. Fred Smith, who was an undergrad at the time, writes this economics term paper, laying out an idea that honestly sounds pretty mundane on the surface: a delivery network built around a single central hub. But instead of just tossing the paper like most students would, Smith holds on to it. After his service in Vietnam, he comes home and in 1971 founds Federal Express, built entirely around that exact college concept. 2 years later, in '73, they actually launched with a central hub in Memphis. But then, by 1974, barely a year into operations, they hit this massive cash crunch and just burned through all their startup capital. The real world violently tested his business school thought experiment. And that thought experiment was a real game changer for the mechanics of delivery. See, instead of moving packages in this tangled, chaotic mess of separate point-to-point routes between individual cities, Smith envisioned a clean, three-step process. 1. Packages from all over the country fly into one central hub. 2. They all get sorted overnight. And 3. They fly back out at dawn to their final destinations. It's like a giant puzzle. And Memphis was chosen for this hub strategically because of its super central location and reliable weather. It was a completely revolutionary way to move goods. Section 2. Myth versus reality. Now, the legend says a single hand of Blackjack single-handedly rescued the company and made payroll. It's a great story, right? But Smith himself has actually pushed back on that version. The honest telling, the actual reality here, is that the blackjack table didn't magically erase the debt. Smith viewed the win more as an omen that things were going to get better. And what those few extra days actually did was create a window, a tiny little window where Smith managed to close an additional $11 million in actual outside funding. That right there, that's the capital that truly kept the airline flying. And this is absolutely crucial to grasp. The win wasn't the rescue. It was the bridge to the rescue. Knowing the difference between a temporary stopgap and a permanent solution is what makes this story so genuinely educational. The blackjack bet didn't fix the business model's cash flow. It just stopped the clock long enough for Smith to find the people who actually could. Section 3. The ultimate structural bet. So, with real money finally behind them, Federal Express fully committed to Smith's student idea, no half measures. Because they routed absolutely every single package through that one central hub in Memphis, they could offer something structurally different than anyone else in the industry. They made a promise no competitor was willing or even able to match: guaranteed overnight delivery nationwide. That bold, fully committed promise literally became the entire identity of the company. But to deliver on a guarantee that massive, they had to make some highly specific operational decisions. First, Smith didn't sit around waiting for total certainty. He raised follow-on capital the second the model showed even early signs of working. And second, and honestly, this is vital, they insisted on controlling their own fleet and infrastructure. You see, a guarantee as bold as nationwide overnight delivery only means something if you control every single link in the chain. You can't lease reliability from someone else, You have to own it. And man, that full commitment resulted in some explosive growth. Let's put this into perspective. Back in 1974, they were staring at a terrifying $5,000 in the bank. By 1976, just a couple short years removed from that unpaid fuel bill, revenue climbed to roughly $75 million. I mean, that's wild. The hub-and-spoke model Smith described in a college term paper didn't just work for Federal Express. It became the standard blueprint that the entire logistics industry still uses today. Section 4. Debunking the C grade. Okay, you've probably heard this one. It's the claim that Smith's Yale professor supposedly gave that original term paper a C, as if the skeptical expert almost buried the idea before it even began. It makes for a fantastic, punchy underdog story, doesn't it? Doubted by the establishment, proven right anyway? But the reality? It's completely unverifiable. Smith himself has admitted in interviews that he doesn't actually recall what grade the paper received. The whole detail seems to trace back to a single 1978 magazine profile, rather than an actual primary record or transcript. Telling a story honestly means we have to be just as willing to correct a flattering myth as an unflattering one. Section 5. Lessons from the tarmac. So, what are the core lessons we can pull from all this? First off, being down to your last few $1,000s doesn't mean the story's over. Federal Express kept flying anyway. Second, sometimes you don't need the full solution right away. You just need enough time to find it. That Vegas trip just bought the days to close the actual funding. Third, commit fully to one bold idea. They didn't spread themselves thin, they bet everything on one hub and one guarantee. Fourth, always check your primary sources. Be a little skeptical of the most dramatic versions of origin stories. And finally, don't let a skeptical opinion, whether it's a real bank rejecting you or some invented C grade, decide whether your idea is worth pursuing. Absolutely none of this global industry standard happens if Smith decides to just let a graded term paper stay a term paper. Now, if this explainer reminded you that sometimes all you need is just a few more days to find a real solution, hit that subscribe button for more real stories. Because ultimately, the quiet truth underneath that Memphis hub is this: what actually happens when you refuse to let a shrinking bank account be the final word?